By the way, Mara said it's okay to use the harmonium during Nishinga prayers.
When did he tell you that?
Yesterday morning. It's in the ISKCON paper. That, yeah. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Solanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasolanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jana Vishnupada Paramahamsa Prabhupada Astachasra Shishimad, His Divine Grace, the A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Kota Vaishnava ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prem Sagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shiva Navadam ki jai, Shri Maya Pranavadam ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Chansana Bhakti Distribution ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Go Premanandi, How glorious some of the devotees. How glorious some of the devotees. How glorious some of the devotees. How glorious Shri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimadbhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, text number 56. Evam kamasu sangsakta kamatma avanchito buddha mahisi yad iheta tathad evhan navartata evam karmasu sangsakta kamatma vanchito buddha mahasi yad iheta tattad evhan navartata evam karmasu sangsakta kamatma vanchito buddha mahasi yad iheta tattad evana vartata. Evam, thus, karmasu, in fruitive activities, sangsakta, being too much attached, kamat atma, lusty. Is someone's phone on? No, it stopped. Vanshitaha, cheated, a Buddha, less intelligent. Mahasi, the queen. Yat, whatsoever. Iheta, she would desire. Tat, all of that. Eva, certainly. Anvavartata, he followed. Yeah. Preferred. It's starting to get cold now. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. Being thus entangled in different types of mental concoction and engaged in fruitive activities, King Puranjana came completely under the control of material intelligence, and was thus cheated. Indeed, he used to fulfill all the desires of his wife, the queen. Purport. When a living entity is in such bewilderment that he is under the control of his wife or material intelligence, he has to satisfy the intelligence of his so-called wife and act exactly according to her dictates. Various shastras advise that for material convenience one should keep his wife always satisfied by giving her ornaments and by following her instructions. Various shastras say that. That's amazing. In this way, there will be no trouble in family life. Therefore, for one's own social benefit, one is advised to keep his wife satisfied. In this way, when one becomes the servant of his wife, he must act according to the desires of his wife. Thus, one becomes more and more entangled. In Bengal, it is said that if one becomes an obedient servant of his wife, he loses all reputation. However, the difficulty is that unless one becomes a most obedient servant of his wife, family life becomes disturbed. In the Western countries, this disturbance gives rise to the divorce law. And in Eastern countries like India, there is separation. Now this disturbance is confirmed by the new introduction of the divorce law in India. Within the heart, the mind is acting, thinking, feeling, and willing. And falling under the control of one's wife is the same as falling under the control of material intelligence. Thus one begets children by his wife and becomes entangled in so many activities under the control of mental concoctions. Om Jnanatamarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurmalitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukham Krotavachalam Mukham Krotavachalam Pungunang my mouth tongue it up. Mukham Krotavachalam Pungunang Hayategrim Yat Kripa Taraham Vande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Vanchakapativascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So this verse has given us some idea of household life, that if one becomes controlled by one's wife, then it could be troublesome. But sometimes the wife, in our Krishna consciousness movement, I've seen that there's many women are very advanced. It's like there's this one devotee, one of my favorite Vaishnavis in ISKCON, Jamuna, Mother Jamuna, the original Jamuna. Yeah, anybody here read that book? Amazing. So she is great. Actually, Prabhupada said that if she was a man, he'd make her GBC. So he was very fond of Jamuna. And there's one pastime in the book, just to give you some inspiration to read the book. There's one interesting pastime. She was walking with Prabhupada in England at John Lennon's estate. And she was walking next to Prabhupada and Guru Das, he was filming. So she was walking with Prabhupada and they were talking, and then she thought, well, better I walk behind Prabhupada, I follow in his footsteps. So she's behind Prabhupada and Prabhupada's walking, and she looks down, no footprint. No footprint. Huh? And it was wet grass. You know, you would see she would see, you know, she's a sharp lady, you know. Yeah, she would see the footprints. It was there was dew on the grass. It was wet. you would see the footprint. So she said, Prabhupada, you're not leaving any footprints. And what did he do? He turned around and said, in the future you'll understand. And he kept floating. I was like, wow. And so many devotees have said, Prabhupada, they see Prabhupada, he's floating. There's so many devotees have said that. It's just, so now, she's right behind Prabhupada. There's dew on the ground. You'd see the footprint, it's clear as day. No footprint. So, little nectar, Prabhupada nectar there. So, in this verse, it mentions that we have many desires. The living entity has many material desires. And Krishna says, Prajahati yada kamang haram partha manogan atman nivatmanatu stastita pragyantarushite. That one who gives up all material desires which arise due to mental concoction, and when his mind thus satisfied finds satisfaction in the self alone, he is understood to be in transcendental consciousness. So these material desires are actually concoctions, mental concoctions. Yeah. So many desires. How many desires? Practically unlimited, yeah. So many desires we come here to try to fulfill. But there's no end to them. So better give them up. Give up these material desires. Bhakti parushana bhava virakti anyata chaisa tika ekakala prapadyamanasi tatasnas tusti pusti shunagaya nugasa. That by rendering devotional service to Krishna, three things simultaneously occur. We develop our love for Krishna. That'll be nice, huh? By rendering service to Krishna, we develop our love for Krishna. We become detached. That'll be nice, huh? Detached from material life. And we get realization of Krishna. That'd be nice too, huh? By rendering service to Krishna, we attain love for Krishna. We become detached from this material world. We get realization of Krishna. Just as when we're eating, we experience pleasure. Today, Mahabharat Prabhu is cooking for the deities, and we're all going to experience the pleasure of his cooking. He's one of our best cooks here. So we experience pleasure when we're eating. You get nourishment, which is compared to realization. We get nourishment, nice, healthy prasadam. And eventually, you become detached. I've had enough. Sometimes I've been at Indian programs. Because the Indians like to feed you, so they just like to keep feeding. And sometimes you put your hands out, and you got to be careful. They'll put it right on your hand. So, yeah, eventually satisfied. Yeah. So this is a great boon that we can achieve simply by rendering service to Krishna. But of course, there's a proper consciousness. There's like in Kapila Dev, he says that there's devotional service in the mode of ignorance, devotional service in the mode of passion, and there's devotional service in the mode of goodness. Then of course there's pure devotional service. So, of course, our goal is to attain this pure devotional service. There was one devotee who had a brilliant idea. He said, well, I'll just engage in sense gratification throughout my life, and then at the end of my life, I'll just say, Hare Krishna, and I'll go back home. Because if you remember Krishna at the time of death, then you go back home. Son, what do you think? ISKCON, well, no, he was coming around. He was coming to. He was kind of. He wasn't initiated or 16 rounds a day, or he was. He was attracted. He was coming and visiting and reading the books and chanting a little bit. But so he had that brilliant idea. So what do we think about that? I mean, there's that Kartikeya's mother. I mean, it's just unbelievable. She was a little she was a little cynical about Krishna consciousness. And then she got, I think, cancer, and she was leaving her body. And just before she left her body, kind of like in a cynical way to her son, Kartikeya was right there. Where is your Krishna now? And she left her body. Prabhupada said she went back to Godhead. So, what are we to say about that? Yeah, if you have a relative that's a serious devotee, then possibilities are there. Don't take a chance. Risky. Don't take a chance. Because generally also, when we're, throughout our life, we're doing so many things. Like this devotee was, or this person that was favorable was thinking, well, I'll just engage in sense gratification and just think of Krishna. It's not so easy. It's not that easy, because it's said that when you leave your body, your life flashes before you, and you have all these attachments. So you think of that which you're attached to, right? You think of that which you're most attached to. And if you're engaged in so much sense gratification, most likely it's not going to be Krishna. That comes, that's in the forefront of our consciousness. So, yeah, better play this life in a very careful way, thinking of Krishna. I was just listening to a lecture by this devotee, Radheshyam, one of my favorite lecturers. He's incredible. He's wonderful. So he quoted this of a saintly person. He said, this saintly person said, I asked for wisdom, and they gave me problems to solve. I asked for wisdom, and Krishna gave me problems to solve. Yeah. So sometimes when we go through the school of hard knocks, we learn. It's a very common thing. Just like we have so many devotees now that have been in the movement for 40, 50 years, and they've learned a lot in this school of hard knocks. So we have Dravida joined in 73 also. So many devotees have been in the movement now for so long, and they've learned a lot from practicing Krishna consciousness in the school of hard knocks. So many tests will come before us, and we have to be ready to pass them. Just like the professor will give so many tests to the student, and they get harder, and they get harder, and they get harder. Now there's a reason for that. So the student gets better and better and better. Just like sometimes devotees ask, "So Maya is a pure devotee. Why is she giving us all these tests? Making it." I mean, and some of them are hard, and sometimes they don't pass. So why? Why is she doing it? To make us stronger in Krishna consciousness. This is why she's doing it. So we have to be ready for the test, just like a student. Big test is, the final exam is coming up. He's studying. He's got to study for that final exam. Otherwise, he could fail. So many tests will come before us. So we have to be ready for them. And the best way to be ready for all these tests that will come before us is to have humility and tolerance. These are the two most important. Humility and tolerance. Because if we're not tolerant, if we're not humble, actually Prabhupada wrote a letter to two sannyasis. And he said, if you're not tolerant and you're not humble, you won't be able to spread Krishna consciousness. You won't be able to preach. So humility is so important. With humility, we understand, that Krishna is great, and we have to follow his instructions, because he's great, as he says in the Bhagavad Gita, that he is the greatest. There's one person who was a sportsman. He used to claim, "I am the greatest." And I saw him in the airport many years later. He couldn't walk properly. He was uncoordinated. He had a stroke. He used to say that sting like a bee and dance like a butterfly. But then he became too proud. Krishna took it away, took it all away. Muhammad Ali. Yeah. So, yeah. Actually, he became very favorable because Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he was able to go into his estate. It's amazing how he got in there. He rented a Rolls Royce, and he had a real nice suit on. And the guard at the gate just passed him right by because they knew, oh, this guy's got a Rolls Royce, he's so dressed. Just let him go right through. And he went in and started preaching to Muhammad Ali, and they became very good friends. Classic. So, yeah, humility, so important, and tolerance, so important. With these two, we can glide through Krishna consciousness and grow and become, as it's said here, become wise. Then he says, I asked for strength, and Krishna gave me difficulties to make me strong. So difficulties are actually a blessing in disguise. And therefore Queen Kunti, she says, Vipida santata sasva tatra tatra jagat guru bhavato darsyam yat said, apuna bhavadarsana. That she prays for calamity. Anybody here pray for calamity? Yeah. I mean, I think she might be the only one that I've ever heard of that prays for calamity. Very elevated. I can't imagine how elevated this devotee is. Amazing. Krishna Prema. Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he mentioned that he was praying like that. So, yeah, because when there's difficulty, there's purification. Prabhupada used to say, the fire of ordeal. Go into the fire of ordeal. We get purified. Just like gold. The way you get pure gold is it goes into fire, right? They put it in fire. And pure gold, you can't even wear a ring of pure gold because it's not solid. There has to be some other metals in there because pure gold is just so soft. You could just like move it around like putty. Therefore they had to put other metals in there. But by that fire connected with the gold, it purifies it of all impurities. And ghee also. You put the fire in there under the ghee, and the impurities come out of the ghee. And you get pure ghee. What's it called? Pure ghee? Liquid gold. Yeah. So, and we also, if we do sacrifice, just like Krishna says, Nayan lokos tayagyasha kutonya kurusotama. It's one of the only, is that the only 2-line verse in the Bhagavad Gita? Nayan lokos tayagyasha kutonya kurusotama. I think it's the only, yeah. Krishna says that without sacrifice, one cannot be happy in this world. Yeah. So by this sacrifice, this fire of ordeal, we get purified, and the result of that, we become happy. We become happy. There was one movie I remember seeing on the plane called A Happy Mind. And I was like, oh, that should be interesting. Anybody heard of this? So this person, he was in university and he was, was educated and he was getting his PhD, but then he became schizophrenic. And he just, really bad. But somehow, by his willpower, he was able to control this, and he became a professor. Oh, no, actually the name of the movie was A Beautiful Mind. A Beautiful Mind. And they said he had a beautiful mind because he had, you saw it? Because he had this willpower, this determination to overcome this schizophrenia. And it was intense. But he became a professor. I think he got a Nobel Prize as well. He was very intelligent, but he was an atheist. So he didn't have a beautiful mind. He had an ugly mind, right? But Prabhupada has a beautiful mind because it's filled with Krishna. This is a beautiful mind. A mind that's filled with Krishna. And this is the result of practicing Krishna consciousness. Eventually, we get a beautiful mind. And there, Sukadeva Goswami, he says in the srimadbhagavatam that he prays to Krishna, please decorate my mind, decorate my words for the benefit of others. So it'd be nice, huh, to have our mind decorated with Krishna, with the presence of Krishna, to have our heart decorated with the presence of Krishna, our words decorated with the purity of Krishna. So this comes about by this yajna, sacrifice. And then he says, I asked for courage, and Krishna gave me obstacles to overcome. So we become courageous when we overcome obstacles. Like Prabhupada said that we should have the courage of a British officer and the heart of a Bengali mother. So Prabhupada knew the Bengali mothers. There was so much affection. And a devotee in Mayapur told me that there was when he became a devotee, his mother became very upset, although she's a Hindu. But a lot of times the Hindus they just do your puja, don't get too serious, do your puja. So she was so upset that he became a brahmachari, because brahmachari there it's like sannyas. She was so upset, and she was pleading with him to come back home. And he was determined to stay a brahmachari. And she came to the temple, and she was pounding her head on the ground to the point where her skin broke, blood's coming. Yeah. So much affection is there. And he said that if we try to live a comfortable life in Krishna consciousness, our advancement will be very slow. So we should be courageous, like Prabhupada. He was so courageous to spread Krishna consciousness, so determined. Like there was one instance where Prabhupada was ill. This is in 1976. So Prabhupada was a little ill. Actually, he never got over that illness. So this is in New York City, and devotees are trying to convince Prabhupada to go to Murari Sevak. I'm sorry, Gita Nagari. And he can go there and write, and he can get his health together, and they were just again and again they were trying to convince Prabhupada to stay at Gita Nagari. Don't go to Europe and do all this traveling and preaching. So right up to the point where they were in the elevator, going down to get his car to go to the airport, they're trying to convince him to go to Gita Nagari. And one of the devotees said, Prabhupada, it's very peaceful there. It's quiet. It's very peaceful. And Prabhupada said, I'm not interested in this peace. I'm not interested in this peace. But I want the honor of being able to fight like Arjuna on the battlefield. Yeah. This Prabhupada he was so courageous. He was like a kshatriya. Mostly he was like a brahmana. But Prabhupada said the preachers have the quality of a brahmana, mostly a brahmana, of course, they're giving knowledge. quality of kshatriya, because we're declaring war on Maya. It's a battle. Yeah. And also Vaishya, because especially book distributors, we're doing some business, some exchange, some business exchange. And so he said like that. Of course, mostly Brahmana. So then this saintly person, he said, I received nothing that I wanted, but everything I needed. So Krishna knows what we need. Yeah. Of course, we're praying to Krishna, but he knows what we need. But when we pray to Krishna, then it becomes, it's good for ourselves, because sometimes we don't know what we want. And therefore it's stated in the Tevadhu Swartha Gatinghi Vishnu, Darasya Bahir Arthama, Andhayathandar Upaniyamanas Te Pisha Chantram Urdam Nibadha. That people, they don't know. In this material world, people don't know what they want. Yeah. What do they think they want? Lots of sense gratification. Yeah. They think that this is the best thing for them is to have lots of sense gratification. A devotee wants lots of sankirtan. But they want lots of sense gratification. But this is wasting the human form of life. Just like the animals are also engaged in so much sense gratification. But in this human form of life, we have the opportunity to hear about Krishna and become devotees of Krishna. This is the way to utilize the human form of life. Otherwise, they're just moving along blindly, thinking that they're this body and they're these senses, just wasting the human form of life. And therefore this verse goes on to say that they're blind, and they're being led by other blind people. Throughout the world, we have no leaders that know what is good for society. In India we have, what's the Prime Minister's name? Modi. At least he's stopping some of the cow slaughter. Yeah, he's doing something good. But still he's got a long way to go to actually be a Rajarsi, a saintly king. Yeah. So everybody's being led by these blind leaders, and what is the result? Everybody suffers. So in this verse, it's mentioned how quite often the husband is controlled by the wife, and I see this a lot on Sankirtan. If I'm distributing books and the husband wants the book and the lady doesn't want the book, 90% of the time he doesn't get the book. But if she wants the book and he doesn't want the book, 100% of the time, well, maybe not 100%, 95% he gets the book. It's amazing. And therefore, quite often when I'm distributing books to couples, and the husband says he's not interested, I hand it over to the wife, and she takes it, and he gives the donation. How much do you want? I had one interesting experience in Miami that I approached a husband, a wife, and there was a little girl, maybe 8 years old. And the lady was really into it. She wanted the books. I had a couple books. And so she told her husband, hey, give him a donation. I'm going to read these books. He said, nah, you're not going to read it. Come on. Let's go. No. Give him a donation. I want to read these books. Nah, they're just going to sit in the bookshelf. Come on, let's go. No, come on, give him a... And he wouldn't do it. So she just walked off very fast. So it's just a little girl there and the husband. And the little girl, maybe she was 8 years old, she looks up at her father and says, "Daddy, I hate you." That's for a little girl to say that to the father. Man, that's heavy. So he reached into his pocket, pulled out $10 and gave it to me after she said that. And then the little girl, she's so happy, she grabs the books and goes running down the aisle. "Mommy, Mommy, I got the books, I got the books." So it was a happy ending for the girl. I don't know if that caused a divorce or anything, but it's pretty heavy. But in general, the women are in control. And one devotee in Los Angeles, he told me an amazing experience. I won't mention any names, but he got a car, nice new car, and his wife liked it. And she said, "Well, can you give it to me?" And he knew if he says no, it's going to be a problem. So he gave it to her. And she wouldn't even let him borrow it to go to the store. When I heard that, I thought, wow, that's heavy. That's heavy. And I was thanking Krishna. And there's an instance also, and you read this book, Salted Bread. Anybody read that? You read it? You read it? Yeah. It's really intense. I mean, in this book, you see the courage of devotees. They were printing books and distributing in Russia when it was still full-on communist Russia. You get caught, and it happened. They would go to the Siberia, and people would die there. Devotees were dying there. So these devotees were so determined to distribute books. They were printing them, completely illegal, that alone, and then going out and distributing them. So sometimes they would get caught, and they'd be taken to jail. And at this one particular instance I'm telling you about, this devotee was getting beaten by the prison guard again and again. Every day he was beating the devotees. And one of the other guards said to this guard that's beating the devotees, "Why are you beating them?" And he said, "Well, my wife said if I don't beat the Hare Krishnas every day, then she won't have sex with me." So therefore he was beating. And this one devotee lost an eye. Actually, the author of the book, Salted Bread, he lost one eye because of this one person beating him so bad. So what happened was they went to some party somewhere, this family, this guard and his wife and a few kids. They went to some party or somewhere, and they were coming back, and it was a storm, and they had a crash, and everyone died. Everyone in the family died. So one of the guards there at this prison was real nice to the devotees. And he even said to them, "Listen, I have a family. I'm not going to hurt you at all. I'm going to be real nice to you." And he was especially careful about being nice to them, because he heard about that. He knew what he was doing to the devotees, and he heard that the whole family died. And he knew because of his offense to these devotees. So we have to be very careful. And therefore, this is the first offense, blaspheming the devotees of the Lord. But to speak of blasphemy, he was beating the devotees, so demoniac, just for sex. She wouldn't do it unless the devotees were beaten. Imagine how demoniac. Jeez. Material world, huh? Goes to show you how demoniac people can be. So, any question, comment, correction? Davida, yes. Who has the mic?
One comment about Yamuna, because you mentioned her at the beginning, and I remember after she passed, there was a memorial in L.A. I don't know if you were around at that time.
I don't think I was
LA.
there.
You travel all over.
Yeah.
So I went up there, And Shyamasundar was there, and I don't think Mukunda Maharaj came. I'm sorry? Oh God, I don't know. It looked like 10 years ago or something. But I remember. I think it was Shyamasundar I talked to on the side, afterward, and because the most famous thing that I always recall is that, that period when the six of them went to England.
Yeah.
And opened it up and worked so hard, and eventually met George and started things. And so Shyamasundar told me that, because they weren't even able to live together sometimes, and it was like a struggle. But they would try.
They were living in boxes sometimes, just homeless.
But they try to keep the morning program going, the rounds and everything, But it was Yamuna who got everybody up. She was the temple president. She was the one who insisted and set the example and shamed everybody to get together.
Wow.
She held it all together, and that was such a important period for the growth of the movement. To meet George and that how making that record and everything was, and just like the marathon, the 17 books in 2 marathon, in 2 months. I remember I was in. Those Festival of Inspiration they used to have in New Vrindavan every year, and I went one year and I think it was Rameswar Prabhu had come and he told the story of that marathon, and there were a few of us. Dave Mita Swami happened to be there. There was a couple of us who had been part of it, and he explained, which I didn't know at the time, how important it was for the whole movement. That whole thing, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary, and how the devotees all stepped up, and actually did it. It's inconceivable in the publishing, two books, 17 books in 2 months. Well, that episode in England had the same effect. Of course, the movement was much younger then, but still there were devotees all over. How to see what their perseverance, just like you said, you get stronger through struggle. So you can imagine the struggles they went through, and how it all just came out in the most amazing way. The movement got a huge boost from that whole thing, and it inspired people all over the movement. So, and Yamuna was right in the middle of that,
Yeah.
And that whole book is full of things like that, where she was so key to keeping the place clean, the first temple, running the deity worship. She was, that. And then there was one episode I remember where Prabhupada was so proud of her when they finally got the land for the Vrindavan temple. That whole story. It was like a gift, and then one devotee was like there was draw straws or something, and yes and no. And so then when they were actually signing the deed, they didn't have the thing drawn up. They said, Yamuna, can you draw up the deed, And she drew up, she was like wonderful.
Calligraphy.
Yeah, calligraphy, exactly.
She knew calligraphy.
And then Prabhupada was so proud to see.
He was so happy that she knew calligraphy.
Some great episodes in there.
And also, before they went to London, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had sent devotees to London, and they were there for, I don't know, maybe 3 years or something. And basically, I think they made one devotee or something. And they go there, these 6 go there, and within a few months or something, there's a news headline in the news: Krishna chant startles London. And they sent that to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was just like, front page, Krishna chants, startle London. Was that the exact? I remember something like that. Yeah. So Prabhupada was so happy, and then they did this album, the Hare Krishna album, and then so many people coming and joining. They had to get another building, and it's just like. It was a Hare Krishna explosion in London because of these 6 devotees. It's amazing. So Prabhupada was in ecstasy. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
You complimented her with, if she was a man, she would have been picked as a GVC.
Yeah.
Compliment that I really like is Prabhupada said she was in Bhava.
She was
in Bhava.
In Bhav, yeah. Prabhupada said she was in the level of Bhav. That's right.
I mean, that's a much higher compliment than some
That's
managerial. And that was when he was on the planet, and she stayed a couple more decades after that. So.
Right. She was a wonderful devotee. I remember when I used to live in Florida, Miami, and she went to Key West when she first came back to America. So I remember going down there, and I had some of the prasadam that she cooked, and man, it was good. She was such an amazing cook. So yeah, I got some mercy there. She used to say to the brahmacharis, "Brahmachari, please bring." She never called by name, always brahmachari, because we would always call Mataji. We would say Mataji, and she would say Brahmachari. Reciprocation. Funny. Yeah, she would ask me to bring something or something. She's cooking. Brahmachari, can you read it? Yes, Mataji. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.